Did you know that two Canadian seniors can have identical work histories, pay into the same programs their entire lives, and still end up with completely different monthly incomes in retirement? Not because one was luckier, not because one had a better job, but simply because of a few decisions, some of them made years before retirement, that most people never fully understand until it's too late to change them. Today, we're going to walk through the retirement income system that every Canadian senior relies on. We're talking about old age security, the Canada Pension Plan, and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. These three programs form the foundation of retirement income for millions of Canadians, and while most people have heard of them, very few truly understand how they work together and how the choices you make can either protect your income or quietly erode it. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear, plain language picture of what each program actually pays, who qualifies, what the traps are, and what you can do to make sure you're getting every dollar you're entitled to. There's also something we'll cover near the end that many higher income retirees completely overlook, and it costs some of them thousands of dollars every year. So please stick with me. Let's start with old age security because it's the one most seniors encounter first. OAS is what's called a universal benefit. That means it doesn't depend on whether you worked or how much you earned. It's based on how long you've lived in Canada. If you're 65 or older and you've lived in Canada for at least 10 years as an adult, you're likely eligible for at least some OAS. For a full OAS pension, you need 40 years of Canadian residency after age 18. If you have less than that, you still qualify for a partial pension, roughly 1/40th of the full amount for each year of residency. So someone with 25 years of Canadian residency would receive about 62% of the maximum. That's still meaningful income, and many newcomers to Canada don't realize they qualify at all. Now, the actual payment amounts in 2026, a senior between 65 and 74 can receive just over $740 per month at the maximum, but here's something that a lot of people don't know. Once you turn 75, that payment automatically goes up by 10%. So seniors 75 and older can receive over $817 per month. That increase was introduced a few years ago to recognize that the costs of aging often go up significantly in those later years. If you or someone you love is approaching 75, that increase happens automatically. You don't have to do anything to trigger it. OAS payments are also adjusted every quarter for inflation. So if the cost of living goes up, your OAS goes up too. And importantly, payments never go down. Even if prices temporarily dip, your OAS stays the same or increases. That kind of built-in protection is genuinely valuable when you're living on a fixed income. One thing worth knowing is that you can actually delay your OAS past age 65 up until age 70. For every month you wait, your payment goes up by a small percentage. If you delay the full 5 years to age 70, your OAS will be 36% higher than if you'd started at 65. For higher income retirees who are still working at 65, this can be a smart move. You avoid having the OAS clawed back during high earning years, and you lock in a permanently larger payment for the rest of your life. We'll talk more about that clawback in a moment. Now let's talk about the Canada Pension Plan, which works very differently from OAS. CPP is not based on residency, it's based on your work history and how much you contributed over your career. The more you earned and contributed, the higher your CPP payment will be. In 2026, the maximum monthly CPP at age 65 is just over $1,500. But here's the reality. Most Canadians don't receive anywhere near that. The average new CPP recipient in 2026 receives closer to $925 a month. That's because the maximum requires decades of contributing at the highest possible level, which many people simply don't do, whether because of time out of the workforce, lower wage years, or periods of self-employment. And speaking of self-employment, if you ran your own business and paid yourself, you paid both the employee and employer side of CPP. That's roughly double the contribution. It can feel painful at the time, but those extra contributions do build a larger future benefit. So if you were self-employed for many years, you may have built up more CPP credit. than you realize. The CPP gives you a 10-year window to decide when to start collecting, anywhere between 60 and 70. Start at 60 and your payment is permanently reduced by 36%. Wait until 70 and it's permanently increased by 42%. That's a massive range. And unlike a lot of financial decisions, this one cannot be undone once you've made it. So understanding it clearly before you decide really does matter. Here's a simple way to think about the timing question. Every year you wait past 65, your CPP goes up by about 8.4%. Show me a guaranteed investment anywhere in Canada paying 8.4% per year, inflation adjusted, for the rest of your life. You won't find one. For someone in good health who has savings to live on in the meantime, waiting is often one of the most financially powerful moves available. The crossover point, where the person who waited ends up with more total money than the person who started early, typically happens in the mid-70s to early 80s, depending on how early you started. And given that the average Canadian 60-year-old today is expected to live into their early 80s, more than half of people will end up better off for having waited. For women, who tend to live even longer, the case for waiting is even stronger. Now, there's an important exception here. For lower-income seniors who expect to receive the Guaranteed Income Supplement, which we'll get to in a moment, a larger CPP payment can actually reduce other benefits. So the math isn't the same for everyone. This is one of those situations where your individual income picture really does matter. Let me tell you about a couple, Frank and Irene. Frank started his CPP at 60 because he was worried about money and didn't think he'd live that long. Irene waited until 66. Fast forward 15 years. Irene's monthly check is substantially larger than Frank's. They each contributed for the same number of years, but the timing of when they started created a gap that widened every single year. Frank has always been healthy. He's now in his late 70s, and he's quietly wished he had waited at least a few years. That story plays out in households all across Canada, and the point isn't to make anyone feel regret. It's to make sure you go into this decision with your eyes open. Now let's talk about the Guaranteed Income Supplement, or GIS. This one is specifically for lower income seniors, and it's non-taxable, meaning it doesn't show up as income on your tax return, and it doesn't affect your OAS in any way. It's essentially a top-up designed to make sure that seniors with very little other income can still live with some dignity. In 2026, a single senior with low income can receive just over $1,100 per month from GIS on top of their OAS. For couples, the amounts vary depending on whether both spouses receive OAS. The income thresholds to qualify also vary by situation, roughly up to $2,200 for a single senior, and different amounts for couples depending on their combined income. One of the most important things to know about GIS is that it's not automatic. You have to file your taxes every year by April 30th for it to continue without interruption. Service Canada uses your tax return to calculate your GIS amount for the following year. Miss that deadline, and your GIS could be suspended starting in July. For seniors who depend on that income month to month, a gap in payments can be genuinely destabilizing. So filing on time isn't just a good habit. For GIS recipients, it's essential. There's also something called the Earnings Exemption that many GIS recipients don't know about. If you're still doing a little part-time work, the first $5,000 of employment income you earn each year doesn't count against your GIS at all. Between $5,000 and $15,000, there's a partial exemption as well. So you can earn up to $15,000 from work and still keep a meaningful portion of your GIS. This is a genuine lifeline for seniors who want to stay active and supplement their income without losing their benefits. Now, let me get back to something I mentioned earlier, the OAS clawback. This is the thing that catches higher income retirees off guard, and it costs some people thousands of dollars a year without them fully understanding why. In 2026, if your total net income for the year goes above roughly $95 or $300, the government starts recovering your OAS at a rate of 15 cents for every dollar above that threshold. It's sometimes called a recovery tax. So if your income is $110,000, you're about $1,400 or $700 above the limit, and you'd have to repay about $2,200 of your OAS. The recovery continues until your OAS is completely eliminated, which happens somewhere around $154,000 to $160,000 depending on your age. Now, $95,000 might sound like a lot. But for retirees who are receiving CPP, OAS, a company pension, and mandatory RRIF withdrawals all at the same time, income can stack up faster than expected. A large RRIF withdrawal in a single year, maybe to cover a renovation or help a child, can push income over the threshold and trigger a clawback that lasts for the following year. This is exactly why many financial planners talk about managing your income across accounts. If you need a large sum for something, and you have a TFSA, a tax-free savings account, pulling money from there is invisible to the government. It doesn't count toward your income. It won't trigger an OAS clawback. It won't affect your GIS. In the retirement income world, the TFSA is the most flexible and protective tool available, and using it strategically can make a real difference. Let's also quickly mention something that applies to couples. If you and your spouse have very different income levels, there are ways to share pension income that reduce the overall tax your household pays. CPP can be shared between spouses, and after age 65, up to half of certain pension income, including RRIF payments and employer pensions, can be split with a spouse for tax purposes. This is called pension splitting, and it can keep both spouses below key income thresholds, protecting OAS and other benefits for both of you. There's also a program called the Allowance that many people have never heard of. It's for Canadians aged 60 to 64 whose spouse or partner is already receiving OAS and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. Because the older partner is receiving GIS, the household is low income, so the government provides the younger partner with a benefit even before they turn 65. In 2026, that benefit can be over $1,400 a month. And for widows and widowers in that 60 to 64 age range who have limited income, there's an even higher allowance for the survivor, over $600 a month. These programs are underutilized simply because people don't know they exist. Let me take a moment to bring this all together because there's a lot here and I want to make sure it lands clearly. Your retirement income from the government comes from three main sources. OAS is based on how long you've lived in Canada. It's universal, it adjusts for inflation, and it goes up automatically at age 75. CPP is based on your work history and contributions, and the timing of when you start collecting makes a permanent difference for the rest of your life. GIS is for lower income seniors. It's tax-free, it's generous, but it requires you to file your taxes on time every single year. On top of those three, there are tools that help you protect what you receive. The TFSA shields your withdrawals from the income calculations that affect GIS and OAS. Pension splitting reduces your household tax burden. The allowance supports younger spouses in low-income households before they turn 65. And deferring CPP and OAS when you can afford to can lock in significantly higher payments for the long term. None of this is about being a financial expert. It's about knowing the rules of a system you've already paid into your whole life. These programs belong to you. Understanding how they work helps you make sure you actually receive what you've earned. If today's video helped you see your retirement income picture a little more clearly, please consider sharing it with a family member or a friend who might be navigating the same questions. And if you'd like to keep learning about the topics that matter most to Canadian retirees, from benefit timing to tax strategies to healthcare, we'd love to have you stay with us. You've worked hard to get here. Let's make sure the system works just as hard for you.